The black dress felt like armor as I stood at the entrance of the funeral home, my hand trembling on the brass door handle. I'd rehearsed this moment countless times since receiving the call about Dad's passing, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. "Only family is allowed here." The sharp voice cut through the somber atmosphere like a knife. Poppy, my stepmother of 3 years, blocked the doorway with her perfectly manicured hand. Her face was a mask of false grief, not a single tear smudging her immaculate makeup. "I'm Stephanie, and this was supposed to be my father's funeral. The father who raised me alone after Mom died, who taught me to ride a bike, who cried at my college graduation. And here I was, being denied entry to say goodbye. "I am family," I managed to say, my voice stronger than I felt. "He was my father." Poppy's lips curved into a cruel smile. "Was being the operative word, dear. I'm his wife, and I make the decisions now. We're keeping this intimate." Behind her, I could see familiar faces filling the chapel. Friends from Dad's golf club, distant relatives I barely knew, even her yoga instructor. My blood boiled. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, taking a step forward. "That's Derek from Dad's accounting firm. He met him twice." "Stephanie," a familiar voice called out. My cousin Rebecca pushed past Poppy, wrapping me in a tight hug. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Poppy's facade cracked slightly. She couldn't stop Rebecca without making a scene, and she lived for maintaining appearances. "Let her in," a deep voice commanded. Hassan, Dad's lawyer, appeared beside Poppy. His presence carried authority that even she couldn't ignore. "Mr. Kelly specifically requested his daughter's presence in his final arrangements." Poppy's nostrils flared, but she stepped aside. As I walked past her, she whispered, "Enjoy the show. There won't be much left for Daddy's little girl." The service was a blur of faces and voices. I sat in the front row, Rebecca's hand squeezing mine as speakers shared memories of Dad. Poppy played the grieving widow perfectly, dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. During the eulogy, I noticed Brian, Dad's friend from the country club, watching me intently. He whispered something to Poppy, who nodded slightly. The exchange made my skin crawl. After the service, Hassan approached me. "Stephanie, we need to discuss the will reading tomorrow. Your father left specific instructions." "What kind of instructions?" I asked, noticing how Poppy suddenly appeared interested in our conversation. "Everything will be clear tomorrow," Hassan said carefully. "Just know that your father was prepared." Poppy interrupted, placing her hand on Hassan's arm. "Surely we can handle this privately, Hassan. No need to burden Stephanie with these matters so soon after her loss." Hassan removed her hand firmly. "The reading is at 2 p.m. tomorrow. All parties must be present." As people began filtering out, Rebecca pulled me aside. "Something's not right, Steph. Have you seen the estate lately? Poppy's been spending money like water. That tennis court she built last month? The new pool house?" I hadn't visited the estate since Dad married Poppy. The few times I tried, she'd made excuses about Dad being too busy or too tired. "She's up to something," Rebecca continued. "And Brian's involved. I overheard them talking about offshore accounts last week." Before I could respond, Hassan pressed an envelope into my hands. "Your father wanted you to have this before tomorrow's reading. Don't open it until you're alone." The envelope felt heavy, like it carried more than just paper. As I left the funeral home, Poppy's voice carried across the parking lot. "Don't forget to check your mailbox, dear. I sent you a lovely sympathy card." The mockery in her tone made my decision clear. Dad had built his legacy from nothing, working countless hours to create something meaningful. I wouldn't let Poppy destroy that. In my car, I held the envelope Hassan had given me, feeling its weight. Whatever was inside, I knew it was the key to understanding what was really going on. Dad had always told me to trust my instincts, and right now they were screaming that this was just the beginning. Rebecca texted me, "Coming over tonight. Don't do anything until I get there. And Steph, Dad would be proud of how you handled today." I started the car, Catching a glimpse of Poppy watching from the funeral home steps, she raised her hand in a wave that felt more like a warning. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. I wasn't just Daddy's little girl anymore. I was his daughter, and I would protect everything he stood for. The envelope sat heavy in my purse as I drove home, carrying what I hoped were the answers I needed to set things right. The law office felt colder than usual as we gathered for the reading of Dad's will. Poppy sat across from me, wearing a black designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Rebecca squeezed my hand under the table as Hassan entered with a thick folder. "Before we begin," Hassan said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to note that Thomas was very specific about how this meeting should proceed." I'd spent the night reading Dad's letter repeatedly. It contained just 3 words: trust the process. Classic Dad, always teaching lessons even from beyond. Hassan cleared his throat. "To my beloved wife, Poppy," he began reading, and I watched her lips curl into a satisfied smile. "I leave you the contents of our joint account, totaling approximately $250,000. Poppy's smile faltered. "That's impossible. There must be more." "To my daughter, Stephanie," Hassan continued, ignoring her interruption. "I leave the following: full ownership of Kelly Enterprises, all remaining financial assets, and complete control of the family estate." "What?" Poppy shot to her feet. "This is ridiculous. I was his wife." "There's more," Hassan said firmly. "A special clause states that any financial decisions regarding the estate must receive Stephanie's written approval. This includes any transactions made in the past 3 months. The colour drained from Poppy's face. "The past 3 months? He can't do that retroactively." "Actually, he can," Hassan replied, sliding a document across the table. "As the majority shareholder, he put this clause into effect 90 days ago. All transactions during this period require review and approval." Brian, who had been quietly observing, suddenly looked uncomfortable. "Surely there's room for negotiation." "There's also mention of a hidden asset," Hassan added, "known only as the Marina Project." Poppy's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. I'd never seen her lose composure like this. "What's the Marina Project?" I asked. "That information will be revealed once all recent transactions are properly audited," Hassan explained. "Your father was very thorough in his planning." Rebecca leaned forward. "So, all those renovations you've been doing, Poppy, the new cars, they needed Stephanie's approval." "This is absurd," Poppy snapped. "I was taking care of Thomas's estate as his wife. By spending millions on luxury items." I finally spoke up. "Dad lived modestly his entire life. The only thing he splurged on was my education." Poppy's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what your father wanted. We discussed everything." "Then you won't mind showing me the paperwork for all these discussions," I replied calmly. "Hassan, I'd like a full audit of all accounts and transactions from the past 3 months." "You can't do this to me," Poppy hissed. "I made your father happy." "You made him a stranger," I corrected her. "I couldn't even visit him in his final months because you always had an excuse." Brian stood up. "Perhaps we should take a break." "Sit down," Hassan commanded. "There's one final item." Thomas left a video message. He pressed play on his laptop, and suddenly, Dad's face filled the screen. He looked tired but determined. "Stephanie, if you're watching this, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything in person, but I needed to protect what I built. The Marina Project contains everything you need to know. Hassan will guide you. And Poppy," he paused, his expression hardening. "I know about Beatrice." Poppy gasped audibly. Next to her, Brian shifted uncomfortably. "What's he talking about?" I demanded. "Who's Beatrice?" "Meeting adjourned," Hassan announced. "Stephanie, please stay behind. We have documents to sign." As Poppy stormed out, Rebecca caught her arm. "Those designer bags you bought last week, better keep the receipts." Once they left, Hassan handed me a USB drive. "Your father recorded everything, Stephanie, but be careful. What you'll find, it's bigger than just Poppy's spending." "The Marina Project?" I asked. "Is a trap," he smiled slightly. "Your father suspected something was wrong months ago. He set this up to protect you and the company. Rebecca, who had stayed behind, pulled out her phone. "You should see this, Steph. Poppy's sister Beatrice just posted about her new vacation home. Guess who paid for it?" I took the USB drive, feeling its weight in my palm. Dad always said the truth comes with receipts. "Be careful," Hassan warned. "Poppy won't go down without a fight." As we left the office, I noticed Brian making a heated phone call in the parking lot. He turned away when he saw me, but I caught 2 words. "She knows." Rebecca linked her arm through mine. "Ready to dive into that USB drive?" I nodded, thinking of Dad's words. Trust the process. Let's see what other surprises my father left behind. The Marina project was waiting, and with it, the truth about what really happened in Dad's final months. Poppy thought she had won, but she didn't know my father like I did. He always played the long game. Rebecca and I huddled around my laptop as I inserted the USB drive. My hands shook slightly as folders appeared on screen. Financial records, surveillance, and one simply labelled Marina. "Look at this," Rebecca pointed to a series of screenshots. Bank transfers from the company account to something called BF Consulting. "BF," I muttered. Beatrice Fleming, Poppy's sister. A knock at my door made us both jump. Through the peephole, I saw Brian standing there, shifting nervously. "What do you want?" I called through the door. "Just to talk, Stephanie. 5 minutes. It's about your father." I glanced at Rebecca, who shook her head, but something in his voice made me open the door. "Make it quick," I said, blocking the entrance. Brian looked exhausted, his usual polished appearance dishevelled. "You need to be careful. Poppy, she's not who you think she is." "Really? And who are you in all this? Her faithful messenger?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I was your father's friend first. He asked me to keep an eye on things, but it got complicated." "Complicated how?" "The Marina project isn't just a development deal. It's—" A car horn blared outside. Brian jumped, looking over his shoulder. "I've said too much, just check the security footage from March 15th, your father's office." Before I could respond, he hurried away. Through the window, I watched him climb into a black SUV where someone waited in the driver's seat. "Well, that was weird," Rebecca said, already searching for the March 15th footage. The video showed Dad's office at night. Poppy entered, followed by a woman I recognized from photos as Beatrice. They went straight to Dad's safe. "Turn up the volume," I whispered. "Oh, can't keep stalling," Beatrice was saying. "The investors want answers about the Marina." "Thomas suspects something," Poppy replied, trying combinations on the safe. "He's changed all the passwords, moved accounts around. Then get rid of him faster. The deadline's approaching and we need those documents." I felt sick. Rebecca paused the video, her face pale. "Steph, the date on this? It's 2 weeks before your dad's heart attack." My phone buzzed. A text from Hassan. "Found something. Meet me at the office. Now." 20 minutes later, we sat in Hassan's office as he spread documents across his desk. "Your father came to me about suspicious activities at the company, large sums being diverted through shell corporations, all linked to BF Consulting." "Beatrice Fleming," I confirmed. "Yes, but it goes deeper. She's involved with some questionable real estate developers. The Marina project was supposed to be your father's crowning achievement, affordable housing for seniors. But Poppy and Beatrice had other plans." "Luxury condos," Rebecca guessed, scanning through papers. "With inflated costs and kickbacks," Hassan nodded. "Your father discovered their scheme and started gathering evidence. That's when things went wrong." A familiar voice interrupted us. "Still working late, Hassan?" Poppy stood in the doorway, Beatrice beside her. My stomach churned at seeing them together, knowing what I now knew. "Just catching up on paperwork," Hassan said smoothly, subtly sliding documents into a folder. "How convenient," Poppy smiled coldly. "Stephanie, dear, I was hoping we could talk about your father's wishes." "His wishes seem pretty clear from the will," I replied. "Things aren't always what they seem." Beatrice stepped forward. "Sometimes papers get mixed up, signatures get confused. Is that a threat? Rebecca stood up. A reality check, Poppy corrected. Stephanie, be reasonable. You know nothing about running a company. Let the adults handle this. I thought of Dad's video message, his tired eyes, his warning. You're right. I don't know everything about running a company, but I know enough about right and wrong. Your father had a weak heart, Beatrice said quietly. Stress can be unpredictable. The implication hung heavy in the air. Hassan's hand moved toward his phone. We'll be in touch, Poppy said, turning to leave. Oh, and Stephanie, that footage you're so interested in? Technology can be so unreliable. Files corrupt, servers crash. After they left, Hassan immediately called security to guard the evidence room. They're getting desperate, he observed. Good, I said, my voice hard. Because now we know what really happened to Dad. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder. We need to move faster. If they're willing to threaten you openly, they won't stop, Hassan agreed. But neither will we. Your father left one more safeguard, something even I don't know about. He called it the final receipt. I opened the Marina folder on the USB drive, understanding flooding through me. Dad hadn't just left evidence, he'd left a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to the truth. Time to go hunting, I said, thinking of Poppy's smug face. The woman who thought she'd won everything was about to lose it all. The Marina Project files revealed a web of deception that made my blood boil. Fake contracts, inflated costs, and a trail of money leading to offshore accounts. But it was the last document that stopped me cold. A medical report from Dad's personal physician dated 3 days before his death. No signs of heart disease, I read aloud to Rebecca. Perfect health for his age. My phone rang. Poppy's name flashed on the screen. What do you want? I answered. Dinner. Tonight. Just us girls. Her voice dripped honey. The estate at 7. There are things you should know about your father. Rebecca shook her head frantically, but I already knew my answer. I'll be there. Are you crazy? Rebecca exploded after I hung up. After what we just found? I'm wearing a wire, I said. Hassan arranged it. We need her to talk. The estate looked different as I drove up. Colder, somehow. Poppy answered the door in a silk robe, champagne glass in hand. Stephanie, darling, come in. Beatrice is joining us. Of course she was. They led me to the dining room, where Dad's favourite vintage wines were laid out like props in their performance. Your father, Poppy began, pouring wine I didn't touch, was a complicated man. Really? He seemed pretty straightforward to me. Beatrice laughed softly. Oh, honey, you didn't know him like we did. You mean you didn't know him at all? I countered. Tell me about BF Consulting. The sisters exchanged glances. A legitimate business venture, Beatrice said carefully. Like the Marina Project, those fake contracts must have taken ages to forge. Poppy's glass froze halfway to her lips. Careful, dear. Some things are better left buried. Like Dad's medical records, the ones showing no heart problems. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Beatrice's smile became fixed. You're in over your head, Poppy said quietly. Walk away now. Take a generous settlement. Live your life. Or what? I'll have a convenient accident? Things happen, Beatrice shrugged. Companies fail. Files disappear. People disappear. I stood up slowly. Is that what happened to Dad? Did he disappear when he found out what you were doing? Your father was weak, Poppy spat, mask finally slipping. He wanted to throw away everything we'd built because of his precious conscience. You mean everything he built, while you were planning to steal it? Steal? Beatrice laughed. We improved it. Those luxury condos would have made millions more than his ridiculous affordable housing plan. And the kickbacks from the developers? I pressed. The money laundering through BF Consulting? Enough, Poppy slammed her hand on the table. You want to play hardball? Fine. Check your email tomorrow. Those photos of you and that married professor in college might interest the board. I smiled. Blackmail? Really? I was 20, and he was my thesis advisor. Nothing happened. But this conversation? Very interesting. I pulled out my phone, stopping the recording app. Their faces went pale. You little... Beatrice lunged for the phone. "It's already uploaded," I said, stepping back. "And those medical records? Copies are with 3 different lawyers." "Get out," Poppy whispered. "Get out of my house." "Your house?" I looked around the familiar walls. "The will says different. You have until tomorrow to pack." As I turned to leave, Poppy called out, "You have no idea what you're doing. The Marina project has powerful investors. They won't let you ruin this. Watch me." Outside, Rebecca was waiting in her car. "Did you get it?" I nodded, hands shaking now that it was over. They practically confessed, but they mentioned investors. Powerful ones. Hassan called while you were inside. He found something in the company's servers. Someone deleted files right after your dad died, but he recovered them. My phone buzzed with a text from Brian. "Need to meet. It's about the investors. Your father left something else." "Can we trust him?" Rebecca asked. Another text came through, this time from an unknown number. "Back off or the next heart attack won't be faked." I showed Rebecca the threat. "They're scared. Good. Steph, this is serious. Maybe we should—" "No," I cut her off. "Dad died trying to stop them. I won't let them win." As we drove away, I saw Poppy watching from the window, phone to her ear. She was calling someone, probably the mysterious investors. Let them come. Dad had taught me well. Always keep receipts, always have a backup plan, and never show your full hand until the final play. The real game was just beginning. The coffee shop was nearly empty when Brian slid into the booth across from me. Rebecca sat at a nearby table, pretending to work on her laptop while keeping watch. "You're taking a huge risk meeting me," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Talk fast," I replied, recording on my phone under the table. "The investors, they're not just developers. They're connected to some serious people. Your father found out they were using the Marina project to launder money." "And you know this how?" He pulled out a thumb drive. "Because I helped him gather evidence. That's why he kept me close. I was his inside man." Before I could respond, Hassan rushed into the cafe. "We need to go. Now. Someone broke into my office." "What did they take?" I asked, grabbing my bag. "Nothing. They left something instead." He held up his phone, showing a photo of his ransacked office. On his desk, a single playing card. The Queen of Hearts, splattered with red paint. Brian went pale. "It's starting. That's their warning sign." We relocated to Rebecca's apartment, spreading out the contents of both USB drives on her dining table. "Look at this," Hassan pointed to a document. "Wire transfers from the Marina project to a company called Queen's Holdings." "That's Beatrice's company," Brian explained, "but it's just a front. The real money goes through multiple shells before reaching the investors." My phone buzzed. An email from an anonymous account, the subject line, "Watch this." The attached video showed Dad in his office arguing with someone off camera. "You can't do this," Dad's voice was clear. "These people trusted us with their retirement funds." "They'll get a better return this way," Poppy's voice replied. "Everyone wins. It's fraud, and you know it. I'm shutting it down." "That would be unwise, Thomas." A man's voice, unfamiliar. "Think of your daughter." The video cut off. Another email arrived immediately. "Back off, or the next video shows how your father really died." "They're bluffing," Rebecca said, but her voice shook. "No," Brian stood up. "They're not. I was there that night. I saw—" A sharp crack split the air. The window behind Brian shattered. He dropped to the floor as Rebecca screamed. "Nobody move," Hassan commanded, pulling out his phone. "Police are on their way." Brian clutched his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. "Just grazed me. They're sending a message." While waiting for the police, I checked my email again. A new message contained just an address and time. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Come alone or the next shot won't miss." The police arrived, took statements, but I could tell they weren't going to help. This was bigger than they could handle. After they left, Hassan pulled me aside. "There's something else. Your father left a safety deposit box. I got access this morning. Inside the box, we found a single document, detailed evidence of money laundering through Queen's Holdings, with names, dates, and account numbers." "This is it," I breathed. "This is what got him killed." There's more, Hassan said. Look at the signature page. There, among the names of Queen's Holdings board members, was a familiar signature, Beatrice Fleming, Chief Financial Officer. She wasn't just Poppy's sister, Rebecca realized. She was the connection to the investors all along. My phone rang. Poppy. Enjoying the show? She asked when I answered on speaker. You won't get away with this. Oh, but I already have. Ask Brian about March 15th. Ask him what your father's last words were. I looked at Brian, who couldn't meet my eyes. You have 1 hour to surrender all copies of the evidence, Poppy continued, or the next video goes public, the one showing how your father begged at the end. The line went dead. She's lying, Rebecca insisted. She has to be. But Brian was shaking his head. I'm sorry, Stephanie. I was supposed to protect him, but I was too late. Then help me now, I said. Tell me everything. He took a deep breath. The video exists, but what they don't know is that your father was wearing a wire that night. The full recording, it's in a place only he knew about. The marina, Hassan suddenly said. The actual marina. Your father owned a boat slip there. I remembered weekends on that boat, Dad teaching me to fish, pointing out stars. He always said the water held secrets. We have 1 hour, I said, standing up. Let's make it count. Outside, a black SUV crawled past Rebecca's apartment. They were watching, waiting for us to make a move. But they didn't know what I knew. Dad's favourite saying, the best place to hide something is in plain sight. The marina held the truth, and this time I was ready for whatever waited in the shadows. The marina's security lights cast long shadows across the docks as we approached Dad's old slip. The Sweet Caroline, named after Mom, sat quietly in the dark water. 2 cars following us, Rebecca whispered from the back seat. Black SUV and a silver sedan. Let them come, I said, pulling into the parking lot. Brian, you're sure about this? He nodded, still holding his injured shoulder. Your father spent every Sunday here the month before he died. Said he was organising his thoughts. Hassan met us at the dock, carrying a small toolkit. Security cameras are looped. We have 20 minutes max. The boat's cabin was exactly as I remembered. Worn leather seats, the old navigation system, and Dad's lucky fishing hat still hanging by the wheel. But something was different. The floorboards, Brian pointed, under the captain's chair. Hassan worked quickly with a screwdriver. The third board lifted to reveal a waterproof case. Footsteps on the dock. Well, isn't this cosy? Poppy stood there, Beatrice beside her. 4 men in suits spread out behind them. You're trespassing, I said, standing up. Funny, I was about to say the same thing. Poppy's smile was razor-sharp. Hand over the case, dear. It's not what you think, Beatrice added. Your father was confused at the end, paranoid. Paranoid enough to wear a wire, I challenged, to record everything. One of the suited men stepped forward. Miss, you don't want to play this game. Walk away. Take a vacation. Forget what you think you know. Like you made Dad forget? The words burned coming out. With whatever you put in his drink that night, Poppy's composure cracked. You have no idea what you're talking about. March 15th, I said. Dad confronted you about the marina project, about the money laundering, about everything. Thomas was going to ruin years of careful planning, Beatrice snapped. We tried to reason with him. By poisoning him? Hassan's voice was cold. By making it look like a heart attack? The suited man moved closer. Last chance. The case now. You know what's funny? I said, reaching into my jacket. Dad taught me something about boats. Always have a backup plan. I pulled out my phone, pressed play. Dad's voice filled the night air. If you're hearing this, I'm dead. Poppy and Beatrice think they destroyed all the evidence, but they missed something. The real Marina Project files, the offshore accounts, the recordings of every meeting, it's all been sent to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Poppy's face went white. You're bluffing. The timestamp on that email? I showed them my screen. 10 minutes ago, Dad set it up to send automatically if I entered the boat's security code tonight. Chaos erupted. Two of the suited men ran. Beatrice grabbed for the case, but Rebecca was faster, swinging Dad's old fishing rod like a weapon. It connected with Beatrice's shoulder, sending her stumbling backward. "You little bitch!" Poppy lunged at me. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Hassan smiled. "Right on schedule." "You set us up," Beatrice realized too late. "No," I corrected her. "Dad did. Every Sunday here, he wasn't just organizing thoughts, he was organizing your downfall." Red and blue lights flooded the marina. FBI agents swarmed the docks, weapons drawn. "Federal agents! Everyone on the ground!" Poppy tried to run but slipped on the wet dock. As agents cuffed her, she screamed, "You have no proof!" I opened the case, revealing a laptop and hard drive. "Actually, we have everything. Every transaction, every threat, every meeting, including March 15th. "Your father was smarter than we thought," Beatrice said bitterly as agents led her away. Brian stepped forward. "Stephanie, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner." "You helped him in the end," I said. "That counts for something." As the chaos settled, I sat in Dad's captain's chair, running my hand over the worn leather. Rebecca joined me, holding Dad's lucky hat. "There's one more thing," Hassan said, handing me an envelope from the case. "Your father left this for after." Inside was a single photo. Dad and me on this boat, both laughing, from my last birthday before Poppy. On the back, he'd written, "Justice comes to those who wait. I love you, sweetheart. The Marina Project was always about protecting you." "The FBI wants statements," Rebecca said gently. I nodded, standing up. Through the cabin window, I watched Poppy and Beatrice being driven away in separate cars, their empire of lies crumbling in a single night. "Ready?" Hassan asked. "Almost." I hung Dad's lucky hat back in its spot. Some things belonged right where they started. The marina's security lights still cast shadows, but they didn't seem as dark anymore. Dad had left me more than evidence. He'd left me the truth. And sometimes that's the most powerful weapon of all. The courthouse buzzed with tension as I took the witness stand. Poppy sat at the defendant's table, designer outfit replaced by prison orange, her perfectly manicured nails now bitten to the quick. "Please state your name for the record," the prosecutor began. "Stephanie Kelly." "And can you identify the contents of Evidence Exhibit A?" I looked at the laptop and hard drive. Dad's final gift. "Yes. These contain recordings and documents detailing the money laundering operation run through the Marina Project." "Objection," Poppy's lawyer stood. "Speculation." "Overruled," the judge said. "Continue." The prosecutor played the March 15th recording. Dad's voice filled the courtroom. "I won't let you steal from innocent people, Poppy. These retirement funds—" "You're being dramatic, Thomas." Poppy's recorded voice was cold. "Take the money and look the other way." "Like you want me to look the other way about the poison you've been slipping into my drinks?" Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Present-day Poppy's face contorted with rage. "That's a lie," she shouted, standing up. "He was paranoid." "Order!" The judge banged his gavel. "Mrs. Moore, control yourself." The recording continued. A man's voice, now identified as one of the arrested investors, said, "Don't be difficult, Thomas. Accidents happen." "They do," Dad replied. "That's why I'm wearing a wire." The prosecutor stopped the playback. "What happened next, Ms. Kelly?" "According to the medical examiner's new report, my father was poisoned with a substance that mimicked heart attack symptoms. He died 3 days later." Beatrice, testifying as part of her plea deal, was next on the stand. "It wasn't supposed to go that far," she said, avoiding my eyes. "The plan was just to scare him." "Who gave the order?" the prosecutor asked. "Poppy. She said Thomas was becoming a liability. The investors were getting nervous about the money laundering operation." "You lying snake!" Poppy lunged at her sister, requiring 2 guards to restrain her. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Rebecca hugged me tight. "You're doing great," she whispered. "Dad would be so proud." Hassan approached with Brian, who was still wearing a sling. "The FBI finished tracking the offshore accounts. They've frozen everything." "Good," I said. The retirement funds? Can be restored to the original investors, Hassan confirmed. Your father's final failsafe worked perfectly. Back in session, the prosecutor presented the financial evidence, the complex web of shell companies, the diverted funds, the falsified documents, all leading back to Poppy and Beatrice. And what was the total amount laundered through the Marina project? The prosecutor asked. $57 million, I answered. Money stolen from retirement accounts and pension funds. Poppy's lawyer tried to paint her as an unwitting participant, manipulated by her sister and the investors. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury took only 2 hours to reach a verdict. On the count of first-degree murder, we find the defendant, Poppy Moore, guilty. On the counts of money laundering and fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Poppy screamed as they led her away. This isn't over, Stephanie. You'll regret this. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Ms. Kelly, what happens to the Marina project now? I stepped up to the microphones. The original plan will proceed as my father intended. Affordable housing for seniors, built honestly and legally. And the company will continue his legacy of ethical business practices. No shortcuts, no schemes, just fair deals and honest work. Later that evening, we gathered at Dad's boat. Hassan handed out champagne. To Thomas, he said, raising his glass, who planned the perfect revenge from beyond the grave. To Dad, I echoed, who taught me that justice is worth fighting for. Rebecca pointed to a small package on the captain's chair. This was in the evidence locker. They just released it. Inside, I found Dad's journal. The last entry, dated March 15th, read, My dearest Stephanie, if you're reading this, the truth has finally come out. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything, but I needed to protect you. Remember what I always said about karma? It's not revenge we should seek, but justice. You are my greatest achievement, not any business deal or project. I know you'll make the right choices. All my love, Dad. Brian cleared his throat. The FBI wants to know if you'll testify against the remaining investors next month. I looked around at my support team. Rebecca, Hassan, Brian, all brought together by Dad's final plan. Of course, I said. We finish what he started. The marina lights reflected off the water, creating dancing patterns on the boat's hull. Somewhere, I hoped Dad was watching, knowing his legacy was safe. Not just the company or the marina project, but his real legacy, the truth about right and wrong, about justice and consequences. And Poppy? She learned the hard way that karma doesn't forget. Neither did Dad. Neither would I. The morning sun streamed through Dad's office windows as I cleared the last of Poppy's things from his desk. Each item told its own story of deception. Forged documents hidden in designer folders, USB drives disguised as lipsticks, a phone filled with encrypted messages. Look what I found, Rebecca called from the storage room. She emerged holding a dusty model of the Marina project, Dad's original vision. He kept it, I smiled, running my finger along the miniature buildings, even after they tried to change everything. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Kelly? The first residents are here. My heart raced as I walked to the lobby. An elderly couple stood there, holding hands and housing applications. Welcome to Marina Gardens, I said, extending my hand. I'm Stephanie. We can't believe the rates, the woman gushed. Everyone said we'd have to leave the neighborhood when our rent doubled, but this... My father believed everyone deserves a safe place to call home, I replied. Let me show you around. As we toured the completed complex, I saw Dad's dream come to life. Community gardens, a medical clinic, social spaces where seniors could gather, everything he'd fought to protect. Hassan met us in the courtyard, legal papers in hand. The last of the recovered funds have been returned to the investors. And, he paused, smiling. Poppy's appeal was denied. Good, I said. What about the evidence room? That's why I'm here. We found something else. Back in Dad's office, Hassan unlocked a hidden panel behind the bookshelf. Inside was a small safe I'd never seen before. The FBI techs discovered it during their final sweep, he explained, entering a code. Your birth date. The safe swung open to reveal a letter and a small box. The letter was in Dad's handwriting. My dearest Stephanie, if you're reading this, you've already uncovered the truth and brought those responsible to justice. But there's one last thing you need to know. The day Poppy came into our lives, I knew something wasn't right. Call it instinct, call it experience, but I started planning. The Marina project wasn't just about housing. It was a trap for anyone who'd try to corrupt it. In this box is Mum's locket. I always told you it was lost, but I kept it safe, waiting for the right moment. Inside is a photo of us three, taken the day you were born. This is your real legacy, not the business, not the buildings, but the love of family and the strength to stand up for what's right. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the pain of losing me, but I hope I taught you enough to protect yourself from those who try to hurt you. Remember, karma isn't about revenge. It's about balance. You've restored that balance. I love you always, Dad. My hands shook as I opened the locket. The tiny photo was faded but clear. Mom in her hospital bed, Dad beaming, newborn me sleeping peacefully. There's something else, Hassan said softly, pointing to the safe's back wall. A final USB drive was taped there. The file contained a video. Dad, in this very office, recorded the morning of March 15th. "Good morning, sweetheart," he began. "If you're watching this, everything went according to plan. The evidence caught them, the money was recovered, and the Marina project is what it was always meant to be." He leaned closer to the camera. "But most importantly, you proved what I always knew, that you're stronger than any challenge, smarter than any scheme, and more capable than you ever imagined." "We found his real medical records," Brian added, entering the office. "He knew they were poisoning him. He could have stopped drinking the coffee, saved himself. But then we wouldn't have caught them," I realized. "He sacrificed himself to protect others." Rebecca squeezed my hand as Dad's video continued. "Don't mourn me too long, sweetheart. Instead, celebrate what we built together. Your mother would be so proud of you. I know I am." The video ended. Through the window, I watched new residents moving into Marina Gardens. Each one represented a life improved, a promise kept. "Ready for the opening ceremony?" Hassan asked. I fastened Mum's locket around my neck. Almost. On Dad's old desk, I placed the model of Marina Gardens, the locket photo, and his lucky fishing hat. A shrine not to loss, but to legacy. "Now I'm ready," I said. Outside, a crowd gathered for the ribbon cutting. As I stood at the podium, the morning sun caught Mom's locket, sending sparkles across the crowd. Perfect karma. Perfect balance. Dad was right. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about protecting others, about doing what's right even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I picked up the scissors, ready to cut the ribbon and open the next chapter. Not just for me, but for everyone who'd been given a second chance by one man's final brilliant plan.